Hi, I'm Dave Kindig from kindig-it Design in Salt Lake City, Utah.
For years, fans have admired the man behind kindig-it Design, the creative genius who turns forgotten hunks of metal into automotive masterpieces worth more than most homes. But when a private group was finally granted access to his hidden personal garage, the one he never shows on TV, never posts online, and never allows visitors inside, what they found sent shockwaves through the entire custom car world. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Polished concrete floors, rows of perfectly organized tools, and the familiar smell of gasoline mixed with paint. But then, someone spotted a large steel door on the far side of the garage, thick, locked, and reinforced like a bank vault. It wasn't listed on any blueprint, and none of the staff knew what was behind it. When they finally pried it open, the lights flickered on, and the entire room went silent. Inside were vehicles that no one had seen before, prototype designs no company ever approved. Experimental body builds that looked like they came from another century, and a collection so rare it left even veteran experts speechless. Some of the cars had no make or model markings. Others looked like abandoned government concepts, and one looked like something Dave built in total secrecy, with a backstory he never wanted the world to hear. Rumors say this secret collection wasn't just valuable, it was dangerous. Hidden deals, abandoned projects, and a discovery that could risk Dave Kindig's entire legacy. Because once they opened that vault, they uncovered something that Dave himself had kept hidden for decades. Dave Kindig's secret garage begins long before anyone ever found the vault door. To understand why the discovery caused such a stir, you have to know the kind of man Dave is: intensely private, obsessively precise, and fiercely protective of anything connected to his work. While the world knows him from bitchin' rides as the easygoing creative mastermind, people close to him say he keeps certain projects so guarded that even trusted employees don't get full access to them. That guarded side of Dave had always been a mystery, until now. It all started when a longtime supplier asked permission to film a behind-the-scenes documentary on kindig-it Design. The idea was simple: highlight how the shop works, show the craftsmanship up close, and give fans a deeper look into Dave's world. Dave agreed, but only under strict rules, one of which was that filming would stay within the main workshop. No personal spaces, no storage rooms, and absolutely no access to his private garage. But on the day the crew arrived, an unexpected issue changed everything. Part of the main shop's electrical system malfunctioned, leaving certain areas without proper lighting. Dave stepped away to handle calls, leaving an assistant to guide the visitors. And that assistant, unfamiliar with the layout, opened the wrong door, one that led directly to the private side of the property. The documentary team assumed this was part of the tour. No one realized the mistake until they stepped inside and saw a space unlike anything they'd anticipated. The garage didn't look abandoned or cluttered. Instead, it looked intensely controlled. Rows of untouched sheet metal designs lined the walls, blueprint rolls stacked neatly on industrial shelves, and on the center lift sat a car that didn't match any known kindig-it build. It was sleek, aggressive, and unfinished. The body shape looked like a hybrid between a 1930s coupe and a futuristic prototype. The surface was bare metal, not painted, not primed, just raw, smooth aluminum with curves that felt too bold even for Dave. One of the documentarians whispered, "Why hasn't he shown this?" Another replied, "What is this?" But the real turning point came when someone noticed the steel door on the far side of the room. Thick hinges, reinforced bolts, and no external handle. It didn't look like storage, it looked like a vault. One crew member tapped it lightly, expecting a hollow echo, but the thud was solid, heavy, purposeful. Curiosity took over. They searched for a switch or keypad, but the panel was dead. Someone spotted a small maintenance keyhole hidden beneath the edge of the frame. The assistant, trying to fix their mistake, begged them not to go any further, explaining that Dave didn't allow anyone in here. But the crew had already spent hours prepping for their documentary, and this looked like the type of secret their viewers would go wild for. After a tense debate, one of the crew members used a thin tool to manually release the latch. The mechanism clicked, a slow metallic shift that echoed through the garage. The assistant panicked. The crew held their breath. Then the door swung open just a few inches. Just enough for the lights inside to flicker on and reveal the first glimpse of what Dave had kept hidden for so long. What they saw was not a collection, it was a revelation. As the heavy steel door creaked open, the documentary crew froze. No one spoke, not even a whisper. The room behind that vault wasn't dim or dusty, like an old storage space. Instead, bright white lights hummed to life overhead, revealing a chamber so immaculate it felt more like a laboratory than a garage. The air inside was cooler, controlled, almost sterile. And in the center of that spotless room sat the first of many shocks that would rewrite everything people thought they knew about Dave Kindig. There, resting on a low display platform, was a vehicle unlike anything they had ever seen. The body had a strange matte sheen, as though it wasn't painted but fused from some experimental material. Its shape wasn't aligned with any known era of automotive history. Too streamlined for the 50s, too sculpted for modern times, and yet too detailed to be merely a concept sketch brought to life. The lines were razor-sharp yet fluid, the angles bold yet tasteful. It looked like the kind of car someone would design if they didn't care about budgets, deadlines, or even physics. Just pure imagination pushed to its limits. One crew member stepped closer, running a cautious hand near the surface without touching it. "Is this one of his future builds?" he whispered. But another shook his head. "No, there's no branding, no notes, no model tags." Then they noticed something even stranger. On the far wall, illuminated by a soft overhead light, were several framed documents. Not blueprints, but official-looking papers. Confidential agreements, prototype permits, and sketches that had government agency logos faintly watermarked into the background. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Why would a custom car designer need federal-level clearance files? And more importantly, why would he hide them? The assistant who had accidentally brought them here was visibly shaken. He pleaded with the team to step back, insisting they were never meant to see this. But they kept moving deeper into the vault, drawn in by equal parts curiosity and disbelief. Behind the first platform were 4 more covered shapes, each draped in thick grey protective sheets. One of the filmmakers reached for a corner and pulled it back slowly. Beneath the cover was a car that looked decades old, yet untouched by time. Its chrome trim gleamed as if polished minutes before. An handwritten tag hung from the bumper. "Project Zero, Original Draft." The phrase meant nothing to them, but the assistant whispered, "This is from before the shop opened, before kindig-it even existed." That was when another strange detail came to light. Some of the vehicles had no VIN, no registration plates, no manufacturing stamps. They were anonymous, legally invisible, as though they'd never been intended to exist outside this room. One of the cameras captured everything, knowing full well this footage could change the tone of the entire documentary. But then, as the crew stepped toward the far corner of the room, they discovered something far more personal than prototypes or classified papers. Mounted on a standalone pedestal was a leather-bound book, aged but well kept. A journal, Dave's journal. The assistant went pale when he saw it, insisting they leave immediately, but it was too late. One of the filmmakers carefully lifted the cover. Inside were page after page of sketches, notes, and private reflections. Drawings of cars that had never been built. Concepts for technology far ahead of their time. And detailed entries revealing the reason Dave had created this vault in the first place. Something he had feared the world wasn't ready to see. Every design in this vault had a purpose. Every sketch led to a bigger idea. And the deeper the crew read, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a hidden garage. It was the birthplace of a secret chapter of Dave Kindig's life. A chapter he had kept locked away from everyone, even those closest to him. But they hadn't reached the biggest discovery yet. Because, in the final row of the vault, behind a second locked partition, they spotted a silhouette, taller, sleeker, and far more dangerous looking than any of the others. Something Dave built for a reason he never planned to explain. The deeper the crew moved into the vault, the heavier the air felt, like stepping into the center of someone's guarded past. That second locked partition at the back of the room instantly drew their attention. Unlike the first vault door, this one wasn't made of steel. It was crafted from a composite material, none of them recognized, reinforced with crisscross patterns of carbon fiber and an internal locking system that looked almost military-grade. Whoever designed it wasn't just protecting a car. They were protecting a secret. The assistant tried one last time to pull the crew back, his voice shaking. "This section isn't even known by most of the staff," he whispered. "Dave works on whatever's behind this door alone. He comes in after hours, sometimes stays until dawn. Nobody knows why. But the documentary team, now driven by a cocktail of adrenaline and disbelief, couldn't stop. One of the camera operators noticed that the panel beneath the door had a manual override slot identical to the one on the first vault. With a soft click, the mechanism unlocked. The door slid open. A cold draft swept out, carrying the metallic scent of machinery that had been untouched for years. The lights inside rose slowly, revealing a single elevated platform at the center of the partitioned room. And on that platform sat a machine that looked like it had been stolen from a future that hadn't happened yet. It wasn't just a car. It was a statement. Its body stretched long, low, and predatory, with a matte black surface that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The edges were sharp and deliberate, like a stealth aircraft molded into automotive form. No grille, no badge, no visible seams or bolts. It was a shape built with intention, an aggressive, angular figure that looked like it could outrun anything on the road and outmaneuver anything in the air. One of the filmmakers whispered, "This doesn't belong in a garage. This belongs in a classified hangar." The assistant nodded slowly. This was the project that changed everything for Dave. The crew stepped closer, their breath shallow. At the base of the platform was a single metal plaque with a hand-engraved message. "Project Phantom, prototype. Not for public release." Behind the platform stood a wall filled with documentation. Unlike the framed papers outside, these were scribbled notes, hastily drawn diagrams, and technical breakdowns that looked more like engineering blueprints than custom car designs. There were references to wind tunnel tests, material stress data, and handwritten warnings like unstable at full output and calibration incomplete, do not activate. Someone asked what full output meant. The assistant hesitated, then answered in a low voice. This was Dave's attempt to create something beyond the kind of cars he builds for clients. This was him testing limits, speed, aerodynamics, power, everything. He wanted to prove a point, that custom design could go further than manufacturers ever dreamed. The car wasn't finished. But what was? There was enough to raise questions no fan had ever imagined asking about Dave. Why hide a machine like this? Why bury it under layers of secrecy? Then one of the filmmakers found a locked drawer on the side panel of the wall. Inside were several data cards and a small, dust-covered tablet. When they powered it on, a video file appeared, time-stamped years earlier. The screen flickered, then stabilized. There was Dave, younger, standing beside the Phantom prototype. His face looked determined, but also exhausted. He explained that the Phantom wasn't made for showrooms or clients. It was a personal challenge, an experiment to build a vehicle that defied traditional limits. But then his voice dropped. He said the project was abandoned after the final test run nearly cost him everything. Something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. The Phantom wasn't just powerful, it was unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. Dave ended the video with a quiet statement. Some things aren't meant for the world. Some ideas stay locked away. The crew stared at the tablet, absorbing the weight of what they'd uncovered. But one more discovery was waiting, something even the assistant didn't know existed. The room felt colder now, not because of the temperature, but because of the truth they'd just witnessed. Dave Kindig, the man known for calm creativity and flawless craftsmanship, had been hiding a chapter of his life that bordered on dangerous obsession. And yet, even after uncovering Project Phantom and the abandoned prototype tests, the filmmakers sensed there was still something more. Something deeper that Dave had guarded with absolute silence. One of the crew members noticed a narrow seam in the back wall, almost invisible unless the light hit it at the right angle. It wasn't a door in any traditional sense. There were no hinges, no handle, not even a place where a key would fit. But the seam curved downward in a strange arc, forming a subtle outline of a panel. The assistant frowned. "I've worked here for years," he whispered. "I've never seen that before." The crew approached cautiously. Beneath the arc was a faint indentation, just big enough for a hand. When one of the filmmakers pressed against it, a soft, mechanical sound clicked from within the wall, nothing like the heavy latches on the vault doors. This was smoother, newer, almost silent. The wall panel slid open. Behind it was a small, dimly lit room. Nothing dramatic. Nothing mechanical. Instead, the space was lined with shelves, and on those shelves were dozens of photo albums, old sketchbooks, and personal notebooks. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary archive. But when the crew stepped inside and opened the nearest album, they realized what they had found. These were Dave's earliest designs. Not the polished work from his television years, nor the refined concepts from kindig-it design. These were childhood sketches, teenage projects, raw ideas scribbled on scrap paper. The cars that resembled spacecraft, engines that didn't follow any known blueprint, concepts far beyond the imagination of any young designer. It was an entire hidden history, a record of who Dave was long before the fame, long before the show, long before the brand. One sketchbook contained a journal entry written when he was barely a teenager. "Cars can be more. They can be alive. They can be art." Another page showed an early version of the Phantom prototype, a crude form of the same predatory silhouette they had seen on the platform. The date on the sketch was decades old. Long before the shop. Long before kindig-it. This was his dream, a filmmaker murmured. Not the shop. Not the TV show. This. As they flipped through the pages, the story became clear. Dave hadn't built the Phantom out of ambition or ego. He built it because he had been chasing one idea for his entire life. The idea of creating a machine that transcended what people believed a car could be. And when the final test run nearly went catastrophically wrong, that dream didn't die. He simply buried it. To protect others, and perhaps to protect himself. But the most emotional discovery came from a simple, wooden box resting on the top shelf. Inside it were handwritten letters, some from the early years of his marriage, others from friends and mentors who had encouraged him, warned him, or pushed him to continue dreaming even when the world seemed indifferent. The last letter in the stack was from Dave himself, addressed to no one. "If anyone ever finds this room, know that the work in here was never about fame. It was about pushing the boundaries of what art can be. These ideas were not failures. They were lessons. And one day, someone wiser than me may learn from them." When the crew stepped out of the hidden archive, they no longer felt like intruders uncovering secrets. They felt like witnesses to a lifetime of passion, raw, imperfect, and fiercely protected. The assistant closed the panel quietly, almost reverently. "We need to go," he said. Dave never wanted this part of his story told. Not yet. As the crew left the vault, each of them carried the same realization. Behind the fame, behind the polished builds, behind the cameras, Dave Kindig had always been more than a custom car designer. He was a visionary who had dared to chase something extraordinary. Even if the world never knew.